Good afternoon. Glad that you've decided to spend some time studying the Bible with us today. Today we're looking at Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 29. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw them, were greatly amazed and ran up to him and greeted him. And he asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him, and when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And it's often cast him into the fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he rose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." Jesus and James and John and Peter have just come down from the Mount of Transfiguration. When they come to this town, they see this crowd. And there's a couple things we noticed right away, and that is that the scribes are there, and they're arguing with the disciples. There's this big upset going on. And we come to find out that the disciples, the other 8, had been presented with this demon-possessed boy and asked to drive it out. They couldn't do it. And so at this point, the scribes are arguing with the disciples. And I suppose they're arguing because they see this as an advantage to their own way of thinking, that this whole Jesus thing is nothing real. And so they're giving them grief because of their inability to drive this demon out. Which is interesting, because we don't have to go back that far to where Jesus sent them out. And when they came back, they were very excited, these disciples and some others that went with them. They were very excited because they had been able to drive out demons. But now they can't. And we wonder, well, how come they could then, but now they can't? Is this some sort of like a bigger demon, a more powerful demon? But Jesus says, some of these kind can only come out by prayer, which is ironic because Jesus didn't pray before he did cast out the demon. But he's his own case. We'll all just agree to that. But it kind of poses us with an interesting idea. You might think that becoming a Christian, beginning a walk with the Lord, is really hard at first. But then as you progress in your faith and as things go along, you just get better at it and things get easier. This would indicate otherwise. Sometimes things get harder. They were presented with a case, they took care of it. Now they're presented with another case and they can't. Because we can never get to a place in our faith where faith itself is immaterial. In other words, our trust in the Lord. It's not about us and what we can do. Jesus isn't empowering us to not need him. That's the way a teacher does with a student. They try to teach them and bring them along to the point at which they no longer need them. A parent does that with a child, but Jesus does not do that. We will always need him, and in greater measure. Well, this goes on, and this man says, I brought him to your disciples. They couldn't do anything about it, so I'm bringing him to you. And there's this discussion of faith, and Jesus, as what do you mean, if you can? The man says, if you can do something, I'd appreciate it. And the man says, I believe, help my unbelief, which is a great, great confession. He's not admitting he has ultimate faith. He is admitting that this is a work in progress with him. And Jesus doesn't rebuke him for that. He takes the man's faith and works with it. Because really, ultimately, the important thing is not how much faith you have, not how strong your faith is, not how great your faith is. The important thing is what your faith is in or who. I have seen a lot of examples recently of people of tremendous faith, but their faith is not in Jesus. They have tremendous faith. You can't fault them for that. They believe lies. They believe them strongly. They have faith, but they're wrong, and it doesn't amount to anything because it matters what we have faith in. And Jesus said, at another point in the Gospels, if you have a tiny amount of faith, like a mustard seed, you'll be able to move mountains because it's faith in him. I find it interesting that they bring the boy to Jesus and immediately there's this huge reaction because there's always going to be a demonic reaction to Jesus. I saw a clip going around this week it was, I think, from the BBC, and a reporter was interviewing some guy, and at one point asked who his greatest influences were. And he mentioned a name I wasn't familiar with. He mentioned a musician. And then he said, of course, the greatest influence is Jesus Christ. And the reporter was like, she hissed, which you can say that's nothing, but it sure seems like this reaction. The name of Jesus is going to draw a reaction. One last thing on this passage that I want to point out to you. This man came to Jesus' followers for help. Jesus' followers could not help him. Can blame them, could come up with all the reasons why. The bottom line is he came to Jesus' followers and they let him down. Today, you can find all sorts of examples, not hard to see, of people who claim that they are the victim of church hurt. Not making light of people's feelings, but what they are saying is they went to Jesus' followers, and Jesus' followers let them down. And maybe legitimately did, but their solution, in many cases, is to chuck it all and walk away. That is not what this man did. This man came to Jesus' followers. They were not able to help him. And what was his response? He went straight to Jesus. Your followers let me down. Now I'm coming to you. I would put to you that is a great plan for you going forward. Because since all Jesus' followers are actually people, they're going to let you down again. There's going to come a time when they disappoint you in some way. Rather than focus on that, rather than act as though you yourself, of course, would never let anyone down. You would never disappoint anyone. Rather than all of that, when Jesus' followers let you down, just go right to him. Go right to the source. And he'll be able to help you with your problem. Well, I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's a beautiful day outside. I hope you're staying in the Word and letting the Word speak to you, speak truth over you. Let the Word stand in judgment over your life rather than you stand in judgment over the Word. God bless. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.